Friends, welcome to Monks and Punks. I'm here with my old friend, Father John Deere. This is going to be a very special episode. This is the kind of episode where I'm just going to command every listener to share this, to post about it, because what we're doing here is we're trying to save the world from insanity and violence using nothing but the Davidian slingshot of Jesus and nonviolence and peace. So, John, welcome to Monks and Punks.
Well, thanks for having me, Sander.
I know you like to start your seminars and conferences and meetings with a little bit of silence, which is very Quakerly or peace and social justice Catholic oriented. So let's do that. And after the silence, I'm going to invite us to listen to your opening prayer. I will say some of it or all of it, and then you could add whatever you wanted to add.
Does that you can say it.
Okay, great. Good. Let's have about maybe 20 seconds of silence, and we just invite everybody listening to just really turn off the mental energy, your anxiety, let go of thoughts, let go of ambition and anger and hostility and defensiveness and violence, and make room for peace and higher power. This is opening prayer. God of peace, thank you for all the blessings of life, love, and peace that you give us. Be with me now as I reflect on your gift of peace to me and all humanity. Help me open my heart and my mind to welcome your gift of peace and do your will of peace. Touch me, heal me, disarm me, and pour out your Holy Spirit upon me, that I may be filled with your peace, live in your peace, and walk forward in your peace and love from this day onward. Take away all that is not of your peace in me, that I might be centered in your peace. Help me to share your peace with all those I meet. Let me be a beacon of your peace. Give me the grace to surrender myself over and over again to you, so that you live through me, your peace shines through me, you make peace through me, and you spread your peace to others through me. Guide me along the journey of universal love and nonviolence, that I may truly be your beloved child, your holy peacemaker, until I dwell forever with you, the God of universal love and peace. Amen. So that prayer was authored by our special guest today, John Deere. And Father John Deere is the author of many books, and his latest is called Universal Love. It was just published by Orbis in February. And I got to tell you, this guy has had probably such an impact on my life. You probably don't even realize what an impact you had, but I was this angry Marxist Catholic dude, and our mutual friend, Father William, the iconographer, intervened in my life and said, you've got to read Father John's Essential Writings of Mohandas Gandhi. And I read it, and it really changed me. So, and since then, that was like 25 years ago, John, we've stayed in touch, and you've gotten even better. You've gotten more activism, more civil disobedience, and more books under your belt. And I think you've also found found more of a groove. You've left the Jesuits, and now you've found a kind of a heaven on earth in Big Sur, where you're allowed to do a lot of writing. Is that right? You have your own kind of personal retreat there?
Yeah, I live here, and thanks again for having me, Sander. And I'm still a priest, and I do Zooms and podcasts mainly now, and write books on peace that no one wants to read. And,
We're going to change that. We listen, if you're listening to this, you're probably overwhelmed by all the violence. There's not enough people like Father John Deere out there. So I'm just like, even if I'm just screaming and throwing my rose
that
petals at
won't
a,
do it, dude. That won't do it. That won't help.
I know it. Well,
That's not the way.
I'm trying to,
But anyway, I'm
yeah.
fine and I'm busy and I'm still teaching peace. And I started a nonprofit called the Beatitude Center for the Nonviolent Jesus. And I've been doing Zooms nonstop since the beginning of the pandemic. And now I do a free weekly kind of global podcast called the Nonviolent Jesus, which is very exciting. And I have had a lot of wonderful guests on it. So I'm keeping at it, but I'm getting old and curmudgeonly, but I think allowed.
Great. So universal love came about because you took exercises classes for the first time in your life, and you had some inspiring coaches in the physical exercise, and one of them was a young guy named Will, and he asked you to be his spiritual director, but he said, "I don't believe in God, but I do believe in universal peace and what did he say? Truth and you
Love.
and love, right?" And you said, well, those can be alternative names of God. It's kind of like in AA, higher power can be what you define it. You definitely need it. We need God, but you don't have to define God the way I define God. And so I think maybe that's what you were doing there. And so then that became the inspiration for your new book, Universal Love. Tell me more about Universal Love.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you. So yeah, here's my little book. It's just a nice little book, and it started with this conversation with this young guy who was my coach like the month the pandemic started. What is that now? 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago, and he was just out of college and a writer and a personal trainer. But it wasn't quite like that. I said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Sure, I'll talk with you." I said, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, what do you believe in?" I said, "Do you like truth?" He goes, "Yeah, I like truth." "Do you like compassion?" "Yeah, I like compassion." "Love?" "Okay." And I said, "Well, I mean, it wasn't going to help if I said, well, then no," which is what the church would have done for 2,000 years and sent him away. And then I said, "Well, how about if we won't use the word God, we'll just use the phrase universal love," which I thought I invented it until just as the book was coming out, Sandard, I was rereading my own collection of Gandhi's writings.
No
And
kidding.
at the very end, I find a sentence from an obscure letter of Gandhi that I put in that book 25 years ago, which says, "Nonviolence means universal love." Yeah, Gandhi's way ahead of all of us. Well, anyway, so I say to the 21-year-old kid, "Okay, you go off." He says he wants to meditate. I say, "Fine. Go off and spend 30 minutes a day with universal love and come back and tell me about it." That's the first page of the book. And well, he comes back a week later and he bursts into tears and says, "Universal love showed up." And it was so touching. Oh, as I've experienced many times as a priest with people who are sincerely seeking God. If you sincerely seek God, God will not be outdone. I can promise everybody that. So he felt overwhelmed by universal love and God. And he burst into tears and he's telling me all about this. And I was very moved and glad. I was like, "Yes, God, you came through." And then he announces, "And I've heard my vocation." I said, "Oh, what?" And he goes, "I'm called to be an extension of universal love." And I nearly fell out of my chair because I was going, "Huh?" I never heard such a phrase. I heard of St. Francis's prayer, "Make me a channel of your peace." Anyway,
So what
we
did
were
he do? Wait. What did Will do to be an extension of universal love?
that was 6.5 years ago. You have to read the book, Sandra, because it's been incredible for him. And so the book is about me. It's about God. It's about what I was working on as well. So I'll try to briefly tell you the story and then return to Will, which is I just started coaching him through meditation. Meanwhile, I'm working at the Beatitude Center. And by the way, I'm trying to get in shape, which worked for a while. Uh, but anyway, yeah, it's incredible teaching him. He'd never been to church, knew nothing about God, and he's meditating morning and night really seriously, and universal love is showing up and he's feeling it. And then he comes in, a month later. This is classic. If I were giving you spiritual, my idea of being a spiritual director is I'm your coach.
Hmm.
He was thinking he was my personal trainer and coach, but I'm much harder. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't believe anything you say. Why are you resisting God? That's basically my Jesuit methodology of wishing I were a Japanese Zen Buddhist master and I'd hit you over the head with a bamboo. That's what they used to do until you were enlightened. The monks would hit the novice. I kept telling Will this. That's not his real name. And he gave me permission to tell his story. Well, anyway, he would come back and say, I don't believe in any of this. None of that happened. I can make this happen. I said, great. Go for it. Your homework assignment is to just sit in bliss and make universal love, feel universal love. He could never do that. And the minute he stopped doing it, universal love showed up. So uh, we went through, as you'll see in the first third of the book, I start teaching basics about contemplative practice, excuse me. And then I was making the connection because my work is about nonviolence, about if you are going to be one with the God of universal love, then you have to practice total nonviolence. That's what Gandhi and Dr. King would teach. That's what I've learned. Now, meanwhile, Sander, so we started working on his nonviolence, okay? And that's the middle part of the book. And then the third part is I start talking, what are the personal political consequences of living in union with the God of universal love and peace. And this is what I submit why the book is original. Because in effect, I was trying to rip off um, Jean de Caussade, the famous French spiritual writer who wrote the classic Abandonment to Divine Providence. But
Right. It's in your preface. I
yeah,
I
but all
did.
those
I
great
Yeah.
mystical books, you could be one with God and then go forward and be a Nazi. You see what I mean? You could own enslaved peoples.
Hmm.
You can rape women. I mean, it's all insane. You have a compartmentalized life. And I'm saying no. So here's the key of the whole book. And it was something that I was grappling on, and it got caught up with my reflections with Will. And then I had a lot of breakthroughs. And it's, again, try to tell it shortly, but it goes back to my meeting with Archbishop Tutu. Um, I flew out to see him. He was a good friend of mine, but I knew he was sick in 2016. 10 years ago, I spent time with him in Cape Town, but he'd been my friend for many years. Meanwhile, I'm writing my other big book during the pandemic, which is my life's work. You can see it. It's a 600-page commentary on the Synoptic Gospels called The Gospel of Peace. Now, I'm reading every sentence as if I were Gandhi and Jesus and pointing out in each sentence how we're all wrong and Jesus is the greatest teacher and practitioner of nonviolence in human history. And it was life changing for me. And then I went on a year-long speaking tour about this, Sander. So it's very exciting. Meanwhile, I'm teaching Will. And when I went to South Africa, as I write in both books, I'm with Tutu, and he's kind of making fun of me, and we're having a good time. And then he gets very serious and says, I'm so glad I'm not God. Now, every time I've been, Sander, with one of these great people, they always knock the wind out of me and say stuff you'd never expect. And I knew then I was in trouble. Like, why would we say that to me? Well, he's thinking he said, John, you don't know anything about nonviolence. And I just love hearing that from the great man who's my friend. And he says, I don't know if you heard me say any of this, Sander, or if you read the book, but he said, basically, God is so beyond our comprehension in total nonviolence that the only way God can be universal love is he has to be totally nonviolent, which means he has to basically let go of all power and be powerless in front of the whole human race and give every human being free will, the freedom to choose universal love, peace, compassion, nonviolence, or to reject it. And so Tutu says every human being in history has totally rejected God's gift of free will and of choosing freely God's way of universal love, compassion, peace, and total nonviolence. And then Tutu bursts into tears, sobbing. And God, if God is truly universally loving, cannot intervene and coerce us and force God's self upon us. And therefore, God watches us kill one another and destroy the planet. And it went on like that. And so he got me, it's taken me 10 years to understand what he said. I mean, it's really been a breakthrough for me in a million ways. Um, in other words, what I was teaching then young Will was, well, ultimately, and this is the prayer of the book, well, then not my will, your will be done is the only prayer. It's all about surrendering our will to God. And the more I start talking about this, and meanwhile I'm writing about it, and I'm learning about Jesus, writing about every word in the three Gospels, I go, oh my God, this is the change in me. I thought I was doing the will of God. All you have to do is say, okay, God, I'm working for peace and justice. This is what I need you to do for me. Do you see how wrong I am there? Anything that I ask God to do for me, on my terms, is a disaster. And so I'm trying to change my whole life. And one of the editors who read this said, well, you could only learn this once you turn 60. And I think that would be really true for me. I'm 66 now. I couldn't have known this when I was a young whippersnapper. I was so full of myself that the journey is not my will, your will be done. But not only that, every day, every hour. So what do you want me to do now? Now, I always think that I must be doing what God wants. Sander, look at me. Come on, dude. I'm it. It's total baloney. And any little problem is a sign of this. This was all new to me. Now, but to be then an extension of universal love, totally nonviolence, that's impossible for us, but not for God. If you surrender yourself completely and say, okay, God, I'm just hand over my life to you. You run my life. God can do anything. Now, I was trying to do that in the Jesuits, but I was still running the show and even working for peace. I'm not trying to do that anymore. And pray for me because I am a strong will, but it's no longer my will. It's basically, we're talking about the ego here. And if you know Richard Rohr, that's been his life's work all along. Forget the ego. We're going to do God's will. Now, but I'm talking about the politics. So the last third of the book is you end up like Jesus. The will of God is to end all wars, nonviolently resist the empire, stop racism, catastrophic climate change, corporate greed, poverty, sexism, gun violence, executions. Basically, all the systems of violence and injustice need to be resisted full on through God's methodology of universal love, universal compassion, even to the point of nonviolent suffering, redemptive love, as Dr. King called it, of accepting suffering, even giving our lives without a trace of the desire to retaliate. It's deep, profound, total nonviolence. And the saints did that. Or the people who tried to do God's will did it. Gandhi and Dr. King, Romero, Dorothy Day are people that come to mind, but there's many of them.
Yeah.
Just
Listen,
one final thing about Will, just to tell you, I don't know if you got to that part in the book. He's he he gets his big job in the Caribbean in the Bahamas. He leaves, but we're still friends now, and we're zooming. And a he's at a resort, and he's got a different 1,000 people a week, and he's offered a lifetime job, very rich, house in the Bahamas. And he leaves all that as he's praying and doing all that. He goes on a trip. He's in New Zealand camping by himself, and he sees up in the mountains of New Zealand a rescue helicopter goes by, and he feels overwhelmed by universal love, remembers his childhood desire to be like a rescue worker, quits everything, applies to be an EMT, is number one at his class. The next thing you know, like 3 weeks later, he's driving an ambulance at nighttime in LA, picking up people been shot and
wow.
saving their lives. I kid you not. And then gets accepted at the number one uh, paramedic school in the country. There's 50 openings. 48 of them are seasoned firefighters getting training to be paramedics. So they know way more than him. Number one in his class, and he's just a dopey kid, I thought. And now is this full-time paramedic rescuing people out here in California, and he's going to move on into great leadership. All of this is way beyond me, and he's practicing surrender so far beyond me, and it's great. He's trying to be an extension of universal love. Isn't that great?
It is
I
great.
didn't know any of that. And even when I was writing the book, I end the book with what he's doing, and we continue to talk.
Yeah, I've only started the book and it's really good. I love the epigraphs and they're all about surrender. And I love the humility you have in the preface in which you say, Will keeps on reminding me to tell you that I'm not an expert and that I'm trying to practice this and I'm trying to get better at it and I'm imperfect. And I was like thinking, gosh, it would be really kind of interesting to put John on the spot and ask him, like, have you ever like been violent or have you ever gotten in a
Oh, no,
fight?
no, I am a violent person trying to become a person of nonviolence. I think every human being is violent. That's the whole point. I think, I mean, the first time I met Dan Berrigan and heard him speak almost 40 years ago, or longer than 40 years ago, he said, we're addicted to violence and death. I kind of never recovered from that.
Wow.
So if
Yeah.
that's true, then the church is Violence Anonymous, a 12-step group. That's
Right.
what Jesus was trying to do. We turn to our higher power. We make reparations. How do the 12 steps grow?
Well, we
Make
became willing to make amends to them all,
Yeah,
and
and we're never going to be violent again. And so I think nonviolence uh, only begins with the recognition that we're all violent. And then we're going to live within the boundaries of nonviolence. We're never going to, Gandhi's initial definition was no harm in thought, word, or deed. Think about that. That's practically impossible,
I
but
know.
not with God. But it sets a boundary. And once you try to live in the boundaries of nonviolence, then then you can expand and blossom into universal love, universal compassion, and even taste universal peace. Now, I've known these great people, Tutu and Thich Nhat Hanh and Dan Berrigan. They were so far beyond anger and depression and despair. They were in another dimension. And I saw that, and they were dangerous people. Tutu was under as many death threats at the end of his life for speaking out against the ANC than ever. And people don't realize it. And the day after I was with him 10 years ago, he's got cancer all through him. He says to me as I'm leaving, oh, by the way, I'm leaving at 6 a.m. for Iran. That's no joke for an older, sick guy. Like, what difference could he make? But he was just trying and risking his life. And how did I get into all that,
Well, I'm
Sandy?
glad you mentioned Iran because I'm eager to like say, John, what can we do? You know,
Oh, that's your problem, Sander.
well, we have this Christian Zionism, Christian nationalism. They seem to be ruining the reputation of Christianity. They're carpet bombing Iran. They're committing genocide in Gaza, and oftentimes it's because they think Israel is right no matter what, because Israel is in the Bible, and therefore, and at a gathering yesterday of the Jesus Peace Project, this 83-year-old Irish Quaker from Central Ireland said, "I sometimes ask militaristic evangelicals, what about love your enemies? What about turn the other cheek?" And they say, I don't want to go there. And so my question is, how do we get them to go there? I don't want to say force them. That wouldn't be nonviolent, but how?
I have the answer for you.
Okay. I have a feeling I'm not going to like it. What is it?
You're not going to like it one bit. And the answer is right there in the gospel. We go there.
We go there.
We go there, and we go all the way to the cross. And that's, in the end, the only thing can do. So I made a couple of quick notes. You began by saying, John, we're trying to save the world. And I want to just say for the record, that's not what we're trying to do, Sander. If you and I and the movement are trying to save the world, we're doomed. There is no way we can do this. The world is gone. We're headed toward nuclear war, climate change, permanent warfare.
But let me push back on that. Jesus came to talk about the kingdom of God, which translates as the reign of God, or the reign of truth, the reign of universal love. And the bringing forth this reign, it seems to me, we know from Ched Myers, our mutual friend, our comrade, the lefty Marxist theologian, Ched Myers, we know that Jesus was fundamentally starting a campaign in the world, in this world. So therefore,
there's different things there. You're saying bringing forth the reign of God. No, the reign of God is already here, Sander. We don't bring anything. We don't build it. We don't have to do it. It is ours for the asking. All we have to do is welcome it and breathe it and live in it and give our lives for it. And that's why it's no problem to be like Martin Luther King on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Yeah, you can go harass me, you can arrest me, you can kill me. The kingdom of God is at hand. Now,
I think King is on my side on this issue, because King would say, yes, save the African American people, save that part of the world.
Well, I'm being a stickler about the word "save" because it's so loaded in our culture.
Change.
But you keep, and it's related to. Let me make the point. You keep saying, "Well, what can we do?" I mean, that's the point of my book, and that's what I discovered really reading the Gospels word from word. Not my will, your will be done. Jesus says in the Gospel of John, "On my own, I can do nothing." That's huge, important for me in these last 10 years. And I saw Tutu Thich Nhat Hanh, Daniel Berrigan, Mother Teresa living like that. And I didn't understand it, but I knew they were living in a different way. I feel like I'm trying to pursue that way right now. And that's why I wrote this book, and I kind of experimented on poor young Will about everything is with God. There is nothing you can do except surrender completely and become an extension of universal love, and let God take your life in ways you can't imagine. And he's going for it. And so am I. But I think I'm resisting, and have been all my life, still trying to be in control for X, Y, and Z reasons. So what I'm trying to say first and foremost is, if we're sincere about following the nonviolent Jesus and welcoming God's reign of peace on earth, then we have to give our lives completely to God and the nonviolent Jesus. Our lives are over. And you see St. Paul saying that, and I am trying to say that has radical political implications: social, economic, racial, gender, environmental. Everything is different. And God can do far more with us if we do that. We don't do that, and I'm starting with activists.
Okay. So specifically, that's good. Now, but give me the specifics on how we do that.
How we let God lead us instead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say this, but you're gonna have to start the meditation of time, giving quality time every day to God and living out the prayer, not my will, your will be done. I mean, it runs through the gospel. Jesus says, my mother and brother and sister are those who do the will of God. In the Our Father, in the center of the Sermon on the Mount is your will, your kingdom come, your will be done. I could go through, and then at Gethsemane, how did he go to his death in perfect nonviolence? Because he prayed, he surrendered himself, not my will, your will be done. He's showing us how to do this. And that's the point. We have to embody the nonviolence and the peace that we wish they would start practicing. And you said, whether Christian nationalists and Zionists are ruining the reputation of Christianity. No, Xander, it's gone. It was gone long ago. The Christianity is so horrible and Catholicism right now because the extent that it supports violence, war, and killing one person, it's in heresy, idolatry, and blasphemy. That is not Jesus. It's
Right.
not. There is no cause, however noble, for which we will ever support the taking of a single human life ever again. Now, we're just seeing a new variation of this. And okay, last week the Secretary of War said, uh, death and destruction on Iran, our indomitable will, and it's the providence of God blessing America. And he's speaking into all these Christians who are just practicing heresy. So, again, what do? Meditate and surrender. Secondly, study the nonviolent Jesus and start doing what the poor guy wants, which is total nonviolence and universal will. If you remember, Sander, I'll end with this and you can ask more questions. Back in the Gandhi book, now a lot of what I got is because Gandhi said all of this. You go back and I've studied every word I submit of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And they said all of this. They said surrender. It's all there. It's taken me 65 years to find it. Gandhi says, you know, I'm having a senior moment, so just hold on a second. He said, everything is about surrendering to God, doing God's will, and living the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount is the greatest writings of nonviolence. So he's reading it every day. And then, Sandra, I found this letter when he was young, just starting on his journey. And then, I read all his letters all the way up to the year he died. He has some close Christian friends, including the famous minister on the Upper East Side, who really pretty much told him, don't come to the U.S., nobody's listening to you. And Gandhi didn't because of him. And he's writing to them, hey, you all. I start pounding the table and the tea computer shakes. Poor Gandhi says, hey, I read the Sermon on the Mount every day. Why don't you Christians see that it ends with the poor guy saying, quote, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? But Lord, we have raised the dead and proclaimed great things and walked through fire for you. Away from me, you evildoers, I do not know you. So if we're doing our own will, we're ending up supporting the culture of death. I really believe that even in the movement, we can do much more harm than good. We have to go as deep into nonviolence as we can. And that's no joke. Then we need God. And the only way to do that is total surrender. And anyway, I could go on and on about that. Um,
Can I
and
ask you?
you can ask me anything you want.
Thank
And
you.
then it means going into public action, but really in organized, deep, methodical, meticulous nonviolence. And therefore, we're talking prayer. Now, I just did a Zoom with Andrew Young, who's 95, Martin Luther King's #2 guy. And he said, John, we didn't know what we were doing. I never heard him say that before. And he goes, we were praying all day long and we just like, help. That was basically what was going on. And everybody thinks it was all brilliant. He said it wasn't like that at all. And that makes sense to me. And he said, we were constantly training people in nonviolence, morning, noon, and night, and training ourselves in nonviolence. He said, you can't believe it. So He said we were completely different than No Kings, Black Lives Matter, because we weren't depressed at all. We were grieving and we were joyful because we were singing all the time and we were totally focused on Jesus. So we are like, go ahead and kill us. And that's what Gandhi had tapped into. That's what the early church had tapped to. The rest of the world is doing this. But I wonder on bad days, can you practice the gospel in first world United States, which is the most deadly country in the history of the world because we're planning to destroy the planet. But Andrew Young said we were able to do that, and he taught me some things about doing that. And isn't that great? Go
That is
ahead.
great. It sounds like they had the real living spirit of Jesus in their
Yes,
community, and it was
Jesus was
running
right there with them.
like it was
And
electrical current. Yeah.
I and oh no, even more than that, they were living in the spirit. And I experienced that when I lived in El Salvador in 1985, with the Jesuits were later killed. They were talking like Romero was in the next room because he was their friend. And we have no theology of resurrection in the U.S. where Martin Luther King is alive in us, or all the martyrs, the Berrigans and Dorothy Day, or these great witnesses. That's the way they lived down there. And they were like, and Gandhi, if you, at one point he had in 1942 300,000 people in the movement in prison, each with a minimum of 10 years prison, and he then got life sentence. And he's an old guy, but the nonviolence had become so contagious because they were so surrendered to God that they were like, "You only got 10 years? Well, maybe you'll do better luck next time." You haven't been beaten over the head like me. Now, it's not like they're seeking martyrdom or masochistic, but they were gone into God. And that's when God can take a ridiculous guy who argued that he was less than nobody. There's no phone, no fax, no TV, no computer. And he's inspiring 300 million people to nonviolently resist the British and to get the British to walk away as friends. We have so much power. We refuse to do it because we're scared, we're angry, and we think we got to be angry to be activists, and we got to be scared, and we're full of resentments, and we're then basically all of that is signs of our ego. We're still in charge. We'll never have a movement that can abolish nuclear war and fascism and racism and all our isms in the US until Christianity repents of its violence and Christianity becomes, the beloved community of active, engaged public nonviolence.
So, and we only have about 17 minutes left if we wrap up at 8-ish. But I need some coaching, John, and I hope you will be my coach for the next 15 minutes. But because I know that you are really in love with the peace of God and the peace of the nonviolent radical Jesus. And, I reference you, I link back to you. I published a piece in religioussocialism.org about the historical Jesus, kind of like a top 10 things people don't really usually know about Jesus, drawing on Ched Myers and Morton Smith and Reza Aslan and a whole bunch of different writers. And and that kind of helped inspire this event we did. The banner is behind me here. Let us stand with Jesus against violent power. And we had people from Union Theological and Catholic Worker and Christians for Palestine.
Oh,
But
that's wonderful. That's
I
wonderful.
know, but yeah, and I always get so expectant and hopeful and
Ah, expectant
yeah,
of
expect
what?
that it's going to be great. And it's always so there was controversy, there's arguments, there's theological differences.
I rest my case. And I mean, Sander, I could tell you thousands of stories of my experience like that, of trashed expectations, arguments, the peace movement, everybody fighting, egos. And then I go and I'm with Buddhists at an event, protests, and there's none of that. And I really, really wonder about that. I got to be very close with Thich Nhat Hanh and talk with him about that. And what's the point? of standing up for peace when we're just all full of ourselves and ego and arguing. And I mean, Merton tried to teach this, and Daniel Berrigan was on a journey for this. We've learned a lot. I think Jesus was very different than we all think. So your event sounds great, and you don't have to get into the details about it with me. But first of all, you can't go into anything you organize with expectations anymore. Why? Because you're supposed to be surrendering everything to God. And then there's no disappointment because you know it's headed to the cross and it's going to crash. That's the way of God. But it's going to be, God can use it if it's truly loving, truly nonviolent, even if people get hurt and killed. I mean, I'd hate to say that, but God, if God is in charge, then it'll go somewhere. But if you're in charge, if I'm in charge, it's going nowhere, and it's going to get worse, and we're going to cause more harm than good. And that I'm just talking turkey because you're my friend. But I've learned this the hard way, and I don't have any answer. I don't think there's an answer. And meanwhile, Jesus went through all of this. He's taken on this horrible empire. They're killing everybody, oppressing everybody. He's formed a community. He's done civil disobedience. Sander, he says, here, my body for you, my blood for you. I want to be your food, your drink, the air that you breathe. And they're going, I'm greater than him. No, I'm better than him. And then meanwhile, this guy is planning to hand him over to the Romans. Maybe Judas was Jesus' best friend. Meanwhile, his number one guy, his lieutenant, Jesus is Andrew Young, is about to deny he even knows him. I never heard of the guy. So, and then in Gethsemane, they all run away from him once they realize he's deadly serious about nonviolence. Put down the sword. Those are the last words of Jesus, and they run away. It says all of them, the men and the women. He's totally on his own. And Mark makes that really clear. So this is the guy we follow. That's why Jan Berrigan used to joke a good peace movement starts small and gets smaller.
I know, because based on this event, I thought maybe I probably this was the ego talking, but I thought there should be a new national nonprofit that can help.
No. All of that's been done, Sandra. And maybe God wants you to do that. But have you asked God? Does he want you to start a new national nonprofit?
I need to.
Hello? That's precisely what I'm talking about. Don't do anything without asking God. And if it's something big, spend even more time. So Gandhi prays for a year and a half, and he's driving the movement crazy. But they said, you're our leader. You tell us what to do. And he comes back and goes, oh, I heard a little still voice say, walk to the sea and pick up salt. And they were like, he's nuts. This is not going to work. He spends a year training 79 people to be shot and killed. They're going to be killed by the British within a week. That's the expectation you should all have because you're just training full time for this. Jim Lawson, my great friend who died, trains in Nashville for 6 months or a year before they did the Nashville sit-ins, expecting to be killed. Diane Nash, John Lewis, Bernard Lafayette, they're all my friends and told me that. We're nowhere near that kind of level. We think we're going to do it because we're in charge. No, the point is Jesus is in charge and you're headed toward the cross. So when the Salt March took off, in a week, there's no phones. The whole country is electrified that Gandhi's walking to the sea and he's going to pick up 3 particles of salt and bring down the British Empire. And the British said, this is the funniest thing we ever heard. But he didn't understand the power. The British didn't understand power. Gandhi understood power. Jesus understood power. This is about power. But it's not our power. And God will only give it to us when we relinquish our ego power and do what God wants as like nonviolent soldiers. That's the level Gandhi and Dr. King reached. So my encouragement is, so I don't know when you went to mass or when you go to don't answer this, but think of a really holy communal service of God you might have had once that you went to. Well, just being with our friend and Father Bill in Taos would be very powerful. Did you go in with big expectations that you were in charge? So all I'm trying to say is everything has to be sacramental from now on. That when you protest, even when you stand on the street with a sign, this is all about God. It's not about you converting people. And the more you're connected to God and surrendered to God, then God can use you. And you don't have to be depressed. You don't have to be disappointed. You're grieving and rejoicing. Actually end up having a lot of joy. It's very strange. I know that. All the thousands of suffering, martyred peacemakers I've met around the world, dozens who were later martyred, were all people of joy that I rarely find in the US,
Hmm.
except from civil rights movement people, hardcore African American activists who have tapped into this Christian way, and Buddhists who are tapped into active, daring nonviolence. I'm not talking about all about passivity. I'm talking about actually making a difference. But the
I'm
results
picking
are
on.
not in our hands. The results are not in our hands. The focus is in God. Leave the results in God's hands, and we just get to love one another and go along for the ride. Okay,
I'm
what's your
picking up
take?
on twice now you've said something specific about the USA, that we don't have the spirit of resurrection. We don't understand the joy of that martyrs have. And can I push it farther and ask you,
Sure.
do you think there are maybe demonic forces at work?
So what is the demonic? The demonic is anything that brings death. Well, because God is all life, fullness of life, not a trace of violence in God. God is infinite, unconditional, all encompassing, all inclusive, universal love, which has to be infinitely and totally nonviolent, which is compassion and compassion and compassion. Remember Merton's definition of God: mercy within mercy within mercy. And it's a lifetime of we get to ponder that, and we get to move into that if we just stop being so scared and stop being so selfish and so darn full of ourselves, like we know what to do. So, if what was your question again?
Well, yeah, I think we agree that there is a demonic energy in the
Oh, so the
United
demonic
States.
is
But my follow up
violence.
question would be: is it strategic to use that term or not? Or
Oh well. So I don't know. I don't know what to do, and everything has to be prayed over and really discerned well. And the people who do that best go the farthest. And I don't see us doing that. And we're certainly all individuals because we've been brainwashed into radical individualism. And we need to form communities of active Christian nonviolence that pray, study nonviolence, and then act together. Small is beautiful. Jesus did great things with the small group. But then you're right. He formed a movement in Luke 10, sent 72 ahead of him, like as uh, lambs into the midst of wolves. That's it right there. We are not going to be wolves. We are not going to pretend to be wolves to convert the wolves. We're going to be total lambs. That's the only way to convert wolves. And that may mean we're probably going to be eaten alive. And that means we announce the kingdom of God, we heal everybody of their violence, and we expel the demons of death. And by that, it's not brain surgery. You get to go around and say, friend, you don't have to be under the spell of Trump and MAGA and the Republicans. But there's no anger in us. We're so beyond that. You can follow the nonviolent Jesus and love people. Leave the military. Don't join the military. Quit your job with building nuclear weapons. I've been saying this my whole life, and people have actually done it. Now, you could say, oh, well, that's because you're a priest. No, it's more because I have a big mouth. Everybody can do it. You all who are not priests can go way farther than me, can go way farther than me. People would expect that of me, but actually, no priest says this anymore. That's pastoral counseling. Have nothing to do with death. Don't be part of inflicting death. Well, our whole country is about death, and money is about death. So we have to non cooperate with our country, with nationalism and all nations, and the government, and war making, and weapons, and violence. Get rid of violence, racism, sexism, executions. These are all part and parcels of the means of the demons of death. Um, and our very lives have to bring only life, love, and peace to others. We can go really deep into the Sandra, and I really, as your coach, encourage you to just go back to Jesus. You can drop me and say, John, okay, John told me to come and say, I give up. I give you my life, and you use me, whatever you want. Do you want me to do X, Y, and Z? What about this, that, and the other? And notice what you're scared of. Notice where your anger and resentment is, or anything that comes up that makes you upset. And notice how that's the ego. Basically, it's ego. You just want attention. And forget it, dude. And by the way, I've tried it. It doesn't work, Sandra. It doesn't work. And humility, it's very strange. Just unlimited service, all to God, total nonviolent resistance, and let's see what happens. Gandhi called it experimenting with the truth of nonviolence. That's where we're going. And can we do that together? Can we organize it in movements in this desperate moment? Things are so bad, and they're going to get much, much worse very quickly. We're still only beginning.
Hmm.
So none of what we're doing is working because we're relying on ourselves. We have to figure out how to collectively, like the early church and the great movements, the abolitionists, the civil rights movement, people like the apartheid movement, the Central American nonviolence movements, and so many throughout the world, the people who brought down the Berlin Wall. It's time for everyone together in America who really cares about following the nonviolent Jesus to come together and kind of let go of our lives and give our lives to this movement. And then God can do something with us. But why should God? Why? We don't deserve nuclear disarmament or democracy. We're all full of ourselves in some way or the other. And so that's why Gandhi is studying the Sermon on the Mount, every single word. And you read that, it's really intense. And even all the Gospels, it gets you to a place that's very, very different. I saw it, Sander, as a kid in my great mythic figures. And I sought them out when I was 21, and they all took me in. Tutu, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Berrigans, I could go down the list, Mother Teresa. They're just living in a different way. But they're a lot of fun. They're full of grief. They're overcome with joy. And by the way, they're all getting constant death threats. Their lives are a disaster. Every single thing they try to do publicly falls apart. I kid you not. It's completely the opposite of what you're thinking. When anything is working now, I think, okay, there's something wrong here. Mother Teresa's joke was, they come home that day and we planned this X, Y, and Z, and Mother, Jesus gave us a great gift. It was a total disaster. A whole fight brought out, and everybody ran off. And they all go, praise God, another gift from God. And they'd all laugh and try it again the next day. And it was almost like you have to burn through a lot of ego. And they just made mistakes upon mistakes. And that's what Andrew Young was telling me, and Jim Lawson and all. I think Jim Lawson reached a Gandhi level of strategic discernment and nonviolence, totally dependent on God. I think we need that kind of thing. But I don't want to lay heavy burdens. Sander, I would just say go to God, talk about it with your friends, really read the Gospels, really study nonviolence, explore, because my book is new for me. This is my 40th book, and I didn't know any of this. And it's really not about young Will, it's about him. He'll tell you that more than me, that it's about can we really let go and do God's will and claim our lamb nature and go into the world of wars of wolves and not become, wolves in wolves' clothing, to fight for peace but really be authentic people of nonviolence. Well, to do that, you can't be in charge. You have no expectations. You are not in charge of the results. And yet, as Gandhi said, you give your life for the outcome. He called it, this is post-doctoral nonviolence from the Hindu spirituality. You've either frozen or you're closed your eyes.
Nope. Yeah, you. It seems that you froze as well on my screen, but you can still hear me?
Gandhi says you have a total inner detachment to the fruit of your action. That is a very deep spiritual teaching. And that he was teaching the movement of Gandhi, of independence. Can we do that? He said they failed because when they got independence, they all killed each other. And Gandhi went to his death a complete failure. 3 million people died in the year and a half from Independence Day to Gandhi's death. And then
Yeah.
he's telling his friends, I should have never done it. I mean, no, think about that.
Yeah.
Dr. King was headed toward that. And I know is close with some of the people close to him, and they were all going, yeah, this isn't working because people don't really buy nonviolence. I'm begging and pleading everyone to go really deep in inner spiritual nonviolence. And then the politics will bear fruit. God's politics of nonviolence will take over us and move us into universal love. But God's in control, not us. And you and I have to make that leap. And by the way, you know, Sander, we'll be a lot happier knowing that God's running our lives as best we can. Now, I'm just saying, I think that's the teaching. As Will told me to say, make sure you tell everybody you're not doing this because I'm full of myself. But I saw this in the great people, and I think that's what Jesus was trying to teach us. Does that make sense? What do you think of what I'm saying?
I do. It does make sense. I think the big takeaways from our hour together are that if we can surrender and stop making our lives about our will, but embrace that line from the prayer, "Thy will be done." Get the ego out of the way. That people that do that go farther
I
and
think so.
have a deeper impact. That's the thing that I got from your book on Gandhi is that he's blending deep spiritual practice. Hartal is like a general strike, but it's also fasting and prayer. It's telling people, let's do a national strike, no work, but stay at home and fast and pray and meditate and instead of work. And that's one of the words. And you know what? The thing you just said too about I'm often quoting, telling people that Gandhi said, "Don't be married to outcomes." It's liberating to like not have to be married to
What does
outcomes.
that mean for you? It's liberating.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean don't organize the event that you just did. You keep doing your work if that's what God wants. And when I say, not my will, thy will be done, the prayer then becomes, so what do you want me to do? What's
yeah.
your will for me? Do you want me to talk to Sander today?
Did
Do you
God say
want
yes? Do this podcast?
So that's the thing. Everything is got to be run by God.
Yeah,
I mean, like you bring it to God because you're living in total intimate relationship with God. Sander, you have no idea how deep Gandhi went with God. I don't think you're quite getting it. And I think very few people in the movement do. And that's why he's the greatest disciple of Jesus who ever lived. And he did greater things. Jesus said, you'll do more. We will have much bigger effect. You'll do way greater things than me because I'm going to God and you're going to live in me and do God's will. And then I'll be able to work with you. Well, we don't want to do that. Dr. King did. Gandhi did, Romero did, our martyrs did, our great movements of peace and love did. We all need to dig deeper roots. I'm not talking about giving up our politics. I'm talking about surrendering our political action, our nonviolent action, our marches, our protests, our organizing, our meetings, our day to day, what we're going to do today. Maybe it's better that we don't organize a few of these meetings and we really take time in Holy Week to really reground ourselves once and for all, total surrender to Jesus and let him run the show. And he's going to say, okay, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And go, I don't want to do that. And then you get to pray over that and go, well, there it is. Then they were no different from Trump. Frankly, Trump's just doing whatever the hell he wants and bringing death and destruction on the planet. But the teaching is all human beings do that. That's what Tutu said to me. Nobody really wants to do the will of God. And that's the only way to be as nonviolent as Jesus. He's the only one who was totally surrendered. And you and I want to be his followers. So Peter didn't want to surrender because he wanted to fight back. Judas wanted to be, he wanted to get somewhere, make a difference.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any money to be made in this. And then the other guys were all full of themselves. I'm greater than you. No, I'm greater than you. Do you realize how great I am, Sander? See, it's just ridiculous. So none of that works. Everything we've been doing is failing, especially as white males. And it's time to get with the program, which this is much more serious and much more exciting, if you ask me. Now we're getting somewhere. Dare we go to the depths of contemplative nonviolent to also reach the heights of prophetic active nonviolence as a movement that we could do what? Abolish nuclear weapons, end these wars, get rid of Trump's henchmen, and bring down oligarchy and end this corporate greed. And so every human being on the planet could have food, housing, healthcare, water, food, education, and even training in nonviolence. All of this is doable, but we're all full of our own egos trying to do it. So it's a lot. It's, I think, a lot harder, but actually a lot easier than we realize.
All right, John, it's about
Hey, I'm
8:08
just
p.m.
getting going, Sander.
I
Hey,
know. I'm
cutting me
framing it.
off,
I'm
John.
framing it. Let me frame it a little bit.
He's cutting me off. Look at that.
But listen, I want you to come do, I know you're not really doing traveling, speaking tours, but we could do an event with you and you could speak to our Quaker meeting via Zoom. We have a giant screen. You could be like your message of universal love and total surrender to the God of peace, I think would resonate really well. And I hope that you'll come, and I hope that you'll continue to do the work that you're doing, because it is spreading light in the world. And
Thank you, and thank you too. This is just where I am on the journey right now. What I've been sharing, and um, uh, I encourage everybody to experiment with nonviolence, and for Christians to just drop everything and let's follow this nonviolent Jesus. The older I get, the worse the world is, the worse the churches are, the worse the country is, the worse I am. But the nonviolent Jesus is greater than ever. And those who have really tried to follow him become greater than ever. And, I encourage you as your coach, go for it. This is where it's at. And it's really cool. And, I sort of I don't expect anything except for setbacks. Sister Helen Prejean called me yesterday and she goes, "Well, John, what's the latest setback?" And I go, "You wouldn't believe it, Helen. That's what we talk about." And we roar laughing and we keep going. You wouldn't believe it. And she's making a huge difference. That's because she surrendered long ago, way more than me. She's great. And anyway, we have enough to go on. That's what Daniel Berrigan told me. And I could talk more, so you have to invite me back and I'll tell you more. But you see,
okay, great.
talking in the background, they want food. It's
I see
getting
the cats. The cats are like, "Hello, how long is this going on, Dad?" Hello, I see them. They're so pretty. So
yeah, they're one is Paul, one is George, and I'm John.
Oh, you're John. Oh, great. Where's Ringo? Ringo's the hamster. So Universal Love is the book, and Beatitudes Center for Peace is your organization, and Pache e Bene also a email list.
That's another group. I used to work with them, but now it's beatitudecenter.org.
Okay.
And I do this podcast and johndeere.org. And I just ask everybody to help support my books and promote my own Zooms and podcasts, because there's no way to promote nonviolence. And it's all bottom up, people powered, word of mouth, grassroots. So I'm asking for your help. And God bless everybody. Thanks for having me on, Sandra. And you're doing great, kid.
Aw, thank you, John. Thank you for your encouragement. Keep me in your prayers.
Really, you are. Carry on. Keep stirring up trouble. Just do it, on God's agenda. And it'll be a lot more fun. God bless you.
Thank you, John. I'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye, Sander.
Peace. Pax vobiscum. Power hates the truth when it comes from below. This channel is about how people fight power in politics, in religion, in the streets, and in everyday life. We cover democratic socialist races, Palestine, and the genocide in Gaza, Quaker resistance, peace work, and the long tradition of nonviolence that refuses to disappear. Because politics doesn't only live in elections, it lives in housing, in labor, in building things with your hands, in culture, and sometimes in loud, unapologetic punk rock. At the center of this work is the Monks and Punks podcast, a podcast about fighting power with all your heart. If you care about politics, Palestine, peace and nonviolence, housing justice, culture, or building a life that doesn't bow to power, this channel is for you. This is not commentary for spectators, it's for people who still believe ideas and human courage can change things.